Hi there. I'm going to talk to you about cymbalsmithing and violin making and what the two have in common. There were talks or interviews before with people from other fields and how we, as cymbalsmiths, could relate to them or get inspired by them. Trading some of the actual work parts of the work, and so I don't think there is one with violin making, so I'm doing that. And this is also a test run for a kind of a video type I'm hoping to put out throughout the year. I've kind of made I took an oath, like saying I don't want to keep anything just for me. When I figure stuff out, when I experiment with symbols, and I find something that is interesting or of interest to others, I want to share that. And I also intend to do videos on showing me making symbols, very detailed, showing every little step of the process. And the reason I want to do that is because last year was my first year of cymbalsmithing, and I'm incredibly lucky to be able to study with Michael Paisty. We do sessions, he teaches me stuff, I watch him hammer. It's nuts, it's amazing. I'm incredibly lucky. And at the same time, I find that the cymbalsmithing community is very open. So I gather every bit of information I can get on the topic, and I found that a lot of cymbalsmiths do share, and I'm loving it. I watch every video and writing and comment and post and that you can find on the topic, and I watch the videos and I rewatch the videos, and I learned so much. And this is a way I could give back to the community. It's a little early. I consider myself still a baby cymbalsmith. But yeah, here it is. What else? This is the general rambling before I get to the point. I will probably make a different channel for this, or a YouTube channel, or I put the videos of this kind, I put them on my website. I don't know. This is a test. Yeah, I think that's it. I feel like I've forgotten something I wanted to add. Well, let's see. Let's start. 20 plus things cymbalsmithing and violin making have in common. There is probably more, or there is less, because some of those are a little far-fetched, or they are intertwined in each other. Let's see. First point: light and shadow. Um, Depending on what they are doing, violin makers, they darken up the room to a complete dark, pretty much, and they use a single spotlight, a lamp. They move around and they cast shadows on the curvature they are working on. So whenever a Cymbalsmith violin maker is working on a curvature, they carve the curvature of the top, bottom of the violin. These things are curved out of wood. They're not bent. They're curved, carved out, is what I wanted to say. And if you have a hard shadow, it's easy to spot inconsistencies. And when they do other work like gluing stuff together or what have you, they use the normal room light. But that is something I've heard and seen a lot of Cymbalsmiths do, to have a special setting of light where it's easier to see if a curvature has dips, or that is something. Number 2, sharpening of tools. There is a lot of tool sharpening in violin making. By the way, I just studied violin making. I never actually worked after that as a violin maker, so I'm no real expert in violin making, and I'm not yet and never be an expert in cymbalsmithing. There will be questions all the way. Actually, I don't want to get rid of the questions. I think it's a wonderful part. And now I remember what I wanted to say before. When I post, let's see how it goes, but when I continue to post this kind of videos, I'm not intending to make a fool out of myself or selling myself short. Because a lot of those videos will be posting of questions or posting of theories or guesses or wild guesses or wild theories and stuff that doesn't even make sense, probably. And I intend to do it also as a kind of a diary, a Cymbalsmith's diary. And I'm going to say something, and a week later I'm going to say something different. And I'm not going back correcting. It's going to be messy, and I'm probably fine with that. I will contradict myself, stuff like that. I have until now made 50-something cymbals. That's not a lot. Only half of them made it to my site. Only half of them I feel I can sell them. The rest is messed up, cracked or overworked or just not right. Yeah, that's that. So I'm not having any issues with asking questions or not being sure about stuff. And as I said, that doesn't mean that the cymbals that I put out, those cymbals are fine. I love those cymbals. I wouldn't sell the cymbals if they wouldn't feel right to me. But in the same time, I want to be able to ask stupid questions as, what does lathing do? Something like that. And you would figure, well, he's a cymbalsmith, shouldn't he know what lathing does? But there are so many parameters and aspects to the work. I just hope that with the help of this kind of videos, I can free. I hope that I get some peace of mind, like tradition of repeatedly asking questions, stupid questions, and put it all out there, and maybe someone gets inspired or has an answer, or that is why I'm doing it. And yeah, all right, sharpening tools. There's a lot of tool sharpening going on in violin making. You constantly sharpen your tools, and you're constantly on the bench grinder sharpening your chisels. I don't know the proper words in English, like rounded chisels. And you also, they also curved. If you look at them like this in this direction, they are curved like this, and they have alongside a curvature like that. And you do it pretty much free-handed on the bench grinder, and then you move to stones, and you make those things as sharp as it possibly gets. In order to be safe, a dull tool is always a dangerous tool, and a hyper sharp one isn't actually that dangerous because it does what it's supposed to do. Problems often occur when a tool isn't properly sharpened. And the first time, or when I started to get into cymbalsmithing and set up my workshop, I remember ordering a HSS steel, and I figured I would then grind it and sharpen it to my desired shape. And then I thought, well, and then I would grind it on a bench grinder and I would take it to the stone and sharpen it very, very finely. And I was and I did that, and then after one pass of lathing, I figured that's not necessary. Tools get even faster dull in cymbalsmithing than in violin making. It is probably a little surprising how fast a chisel or whatever tool you have in woodworking can dull up, even though wood is very soft and bronze is very hard, and the lathe bit we use in cymbalsmithing are carbide or a hard steel. This is something I have to give HSS steel another chance. Probably there are different kinds of HSS steel. The ones I had were just too soft and it wasn't working, and I realized that. So yeah, a lot of sharpening, which is important and kind of fun to do. I find it to be relaxing, even on the bench grinder. It has you have to be consistent with your moves. It's just a wonderful thing to do. I don't know, it makes me happy. I like sharpening things. So number 3, backing plate. In cymbalsmithing, you have a backing plate, and so do you have a backing plate in violin making. If you make the top of your violin the top soundboard, which has a curvature like this, and you usually start with the curvature to the outside, and then you flip it over and carve out the inside. And if you do that, and you would place it on a table, it would wobble around. So you make a backing plate, which obviously has somewhat the form of a violin and is a little steeper than the actual curvature of the violin, just to make sure the everything is snug. That's a backing plate. Yeah. Number 4, symmetry. That's a crazy one. In cymbalsmithing, you have symmetry all over the cymbal. You can take whatever point on the cymbal and then go to the opposite side, and it should be more or less the same. If you have a cymbal and cut it in half and look at the two profiles, they should be the same. They should have the same shape on either side of the center hole. And this moves around and is a constant. It's all symmetrical. Or I try. There are always there's room for inconsistency to a certain point. In violin making, the symmetry, if this would be the body of the violin and this would be the neck, the symmetry just goes along the middle side. So we have those two parts, which are symmetrical to some degree. The actual shape is symmetrical. The curvature is symmetrical, but only this way, not this way. The upper part is smaller. This part here would be bigger, and there are different shapes and stuff. But this way, it's pretty symmetrical, but not all the way. First, you have the strings. They are not symmetrical. You have it's thick, a little less thick, and they got thinner, the 4 strings. You have inside the violin, there is stuff that is not symmetrical. You can see it when you look inside of a violin. There is a little bit of stuff going on, and those things are not symmetrical. And there is more stuff that isn't really symmetrical, like the neck. If you play violin like this, there is you can only twist your hand so much. So you can make it a little easier for the players when you tilt the neck a little bit this way. So you can mount the neck slightly angled, or you mount it straight and just plain off the upper part of the neck where the fretboard is glued on afterwards, a little bit to the side, a little bit to ease the playing. And then the fretboard itself, and also the bridge, everything, all those things, they are tilted and they are not symmetrical. You also have to keep in mind, same thing as for a double bass, of course, that difference, or guitars or any string instrument, a thicker string usually takes more or has more movement to it, so you have to leave a little bit of space between the string and the fretboard. And the thinner the strings get, the less movement you have. This is another thing that is not symmetrical on the fretboard. Sometimes you actually it's not perfectly flat underneath the strings, but carved out into a slight curve, so that the middle of the string isn't touching the fretboard, but there are different opinions on that and different techniques. But yeah, those things aren't symmetrical. But this is interesting. Violin making. The violin offers a symmetry that is missing in cymbalsmithing, and that is a symmetry of material. The cymbal blank isn't symmetrical. There are different zones. It's all B20, but if you would measure around the cymbal, you would find some zones with a little less tin or a little more tin. It's not as consistent as it could, or it's just the way it is. On the other hand, wood by itself isn't symmetrical because it's organic, and you have the rings of growth. I don't know how they are called. They're not. This is not a geometrical thing. It's organic, but when you make the top and sometimes the bottom part, but talking about the soundboard plate, top, whatever you call it, of the violin, which is made of I don't know the name in English. It's a pretty much like a I don't know the name. Sorry. It's like pretty much like a Christmas tree. I don't know. Is it pine? I don't know. I don't know the word. It's very soft. It's your usual wood you can buy in your store for building stuff. The soft wood. I don't know the name of. So you have something organic, and then you turn it into something not all the way, but pretty much. You turn it into something symmetrical, and you do this by. I hope I can explain this. I don't have a pen and nothing, but figure this. So this would be a trunk of a tree. All right, trees like this, and you would cut the tree in at least the height of what the body of the violin would be. A little more, of course, and you would cut the tree into little trunks, and then you would look at it like that, and you'd see here the rings of growth, and then you would cut out a piece like in a cake to the center, like hopefully you can see this from here to say here, a little triangle, and you take this away. So now we're having this triangle. I can maybe form a triangle with this paper. It's getting silly, but let's do this. No, I can't. I cannot. I'll forget about it. So we have this triangular shape. Like, let's say this. All right, this would be the outside of the tree. This would be the middle part of the tree. And then you would cut this triangle in half. And then you would take those two things apart and glue it back together here. So what that means is, when this is the body of the violin, and the symmetry runs along the middle, there is where the two parts are glued together. And the wood, you can see the rings of the year. They are very fine. But sometimes they are fine, and then you get a little bit less fine, and then fine again, whatever. And you could trace it. So whatever happens here happens also here at the same distance, because initially those two parts, even though they are far apart from each other, inside the trunk of the tree, they were side by side. I should have brought a pen to draw it. I hope you can understand what I mean. And it's not 100%. It's not 100% symmetrical, since it's not exactly the same point, but it's so close. It's like the closest neighbor of wood. And then you go like this. And this is why violin offers a kind of a symmetry in material itself, which cymbals do not have. They are messy B20 with different zones and characteristics all over. This is getting long. Oh my god. I'm figuring this stuff out as I go. Maybe videos will be shorter in the future, maybe not. This is intended for cymbalsmiths and cymbal enthusiasts and all the people interested in cymbals. So I don't care if it's long. Number 5. This is a tool. I don't know the word of it. A thickness, a measure, a tool with which you measure the thickness, and it goes like this. And you have a little clock where you can read your measurement. And this works very well for violin making, because within the curvature there are different zones of thickness. It's not all uniformly the same thickness. It gets low, like to just a few millimeters. Same with a cymbal, with the tapering. It's not all the same thickness. It can be, but this thing, I don't know the word of, is extremely helpful for me, especially in the beginning, to actually measure the tapering. We'll get on this topic later on again, but this is just a tool that is extremely comfortable to work with. Number 6 is actually the same thing, just a little with a different aspect. So you can measure taper in cymbal or in violin making, but you can also feel it by hand. You can take a cymbal and put your thumbs underneath and start to bend it, and you can place the thumb closer to the edge and try to bend only the outer portion of the cymbal. And when it gives, when it bends like locally just on the outer edge of the cymbal, you know that it has a lightness to it. It's thin, it's thinned out. And when you move the thumbs in, like your counter thingies, and you bend the cymbal again, you feel the tapering depending on how big how big the cymbal is. You can feel the whole thing move, or just parts of it. I think you could even feel a reverse tapering, which feels I have one cymbal. I still have to actually measure it, but I'm 100% sure it has a reverse tapering. And it feels so clunky when you bend it. The whole thing bends like like almost if there was an anchor point at the transition, and nothing on the edge moves whatsoever. This would be a felt reverse tapering. And the same thing in violin making. You have your measurements, and you go almost there, leaving a little more material, and then you could, instead of measuring, because the measuring only takes you so far, you still have, it's still organic material. You still don't know what would be the outcome of it. So you at some point you actually have to move from measuring to feeling, and you take your soundboard top plate. I'll check the names later, of your violin, which is curved like this, and you would start bending it in different zones, and you would search for parts that don't move or move. Mostly those parts that feel rigid or blocky, and you would then go in and work some more just in those regions. Number 7, mystique, references, secrets. This is I don't know where it goes. There is some mystique. I don't know if I don't even know if this is the right word. Secrets, mystique, a Stradivari. I don't know how to pronounce it either in English. Stradivarius. You give that name to someone, and even if they're not into music or violins, they probably know the name and think of some old-timey workshop, and a lot of mystery and a lot of secrets and a secret lacquer and all that stuff. And we have in violin making, you have your Stradivarius, you have your Guarneri and your Amati, or even Amatis, because there are more of them. Those are probably the big 3. And in in Cymbalsmithing, you have the old case, and you have these pizzichinos, and there is a mystique about them, and lots of wonder and guessing. And part of this kind of video is to demystify stuff. I love to demystify stuff. It's one of my favorite things to do on this wonderful planet called Earth. Demystifying stuff. Not because I want to take away something from someone, not because I want to make things robotic or small, or I just feel there will always be Timothy Roberts in one of his recent posts. He said this before multiple times, that there will always be the part of you bringing something, you bring your personality into the cymbal, and you cannot even take this away. There isn't even a way to take this away. This will always be. I think that, and I love that, and this is why things like violin making or cymbalsmithing are fun, because there is room for experiments and there is room for just go with the flow, um, and this is wonderful. And but there is something before that, and if I would make a whole cymbal and trying to what's the words, if I would ask myself with every hammer stroke what I'm feeling or how I feel about it or what's the vision behind it, it would get I would get overloaded. It's just too much. So I dream of bringing my cymbals to a certain point of the whole making process of the cymbal, and leave some room for those things. But I don't have to do everything with intent. Well, with intention, probably yes, but not with so much. It's hard to describe. I'm not sure if I'm getting the point across. So let's try again. I love when things are clear, when I know why something is working and I know what the steps are to get to this point, to a certain point. And it's always, I still have to hand hammer it. There are hundreds of strokes, but I also want to be free to just to feel whatever I want to feel, or think about stuff, or just listening to the sound through headphones, protection headphones, to focus on how I move the cymbal, and I'm extremely content within this while doing those things. The mystique or the personal things you add to the cymbal, I dream of adding those things, as I said, just later in the process. And there is another point we're getting to, which will maybe bring the point across better. It would be an overload to do everything with out of emotion. And when Tim talks about this, it does not only mean when I'm angry I hit harder, and when I'm sad I'm just, it's a lot of things. I assume what he's meaning by that, what he means by that. It could be, he talks about mindset of the day, of that particular day, and this could mean, for example, how you deal with making decisions, because in cymbalsmithing you have to constantly make decisions, and your mindset obviously could play into this. It's hard to explain, but this is the fun part and the wonderful part, and yeah, actually the part I'm loving, but I also want to I'm also loving the other part. Um, and yeah, let's see if I'm getting to the point later on. I'm sorry for the babbling. Let's go on. Or actually stay. Mystique references secrets. That was the point. The old case, your Stradivarius, the secret lacquer, blah blah blah. There is no secret lacquer. There is no secret to violin making. It's all on the table. There is no secret at all. That doesn't mean that you can clone, which is another point further down. You cannot clone a Stradivarius just by doing everything exactly the same. And the reason for that is that the materials used in violins have changed due to environmental changes of our world. So the same tree in the same region, cut in the same way, doesn't produce the same wood as it has 300 or 400 years ago, or even longer. Same thing goes with resins that you take out of some trees to add to the lacquer. Those resins aren't the same anymore, and you can come close, but it's never going to be the same. And the mystique is something. Well, yeah, I love it, and at the same time I kind of hate it. Can't we just all be I don't know, seeing the things as they are? Or it's maybe interesting, where does mystique come from? Why are we so drawn to mystique and secrets and all that stuff? It's just I wonder about it. So you have these things both in violin making and in Cymbalsmithing. Number 8, is it art or is it handicraft? It's also a topic you hear other Cymbalsmiths talking about. I'm not even sure. I'm not sure if I have an opinion. It's just something that is extremely similar in Cymbalsmithing and violin making, probably in every also for every other instrument you're building. It gets precise at some point. You need to know what you're doing, and you need to repeat it, and you could read it as art or handicraft, or I'm not sure about that. It's just something that is a topic in both worlds. Number 9, making cymbals or violins look older than they really are. This is something that is very, very, very similar. In Cymbalsmithing, you can make a patina, and a patina isn't a fake thing. It depends on what you're doing. I have no I never did a patina on a cymbal. I probably will because it's seems fun. But I never did, so I cannot really explore on that or go further with my points. But you can use a patina for sound or for looks or both, and you have that in violins too. You have your violins that look like they are 300 years old, and they are used up, and the lacquer has vanished at certain points and not other points, and there are dents all around and stuff. And some violin makers do this kind of things. I don't know what's the word in English or German. I know it's called when a violin has that kind of treatment. In Italian, it would say it's antichizzato, which is a made. Yeah, you probably get the word. It has antique. You antichizzare. I don't know. It doesn't work like that, but that's the thing. And it's pretty. There are some violin makers that take this extremely far, like astoundingly far. Actually, beautifully far. I'm not so sure if I'm liking it per se. It seems, why not give the cymbal the violin the chance to make its own story, and after 300 years it will look different for certain, for sure. In cymbals you could do the same thing. You could just leave it as it is and get your natural patina over the years, but you have to wait really, really long. And patina, especially as far as what it does to the sound, it's very interesting. I often wish that I could just put a patina on my cymbals, and I would hope for the it would tame maybe the high frequency a little bit. For the time being, I'm leaving my cymbals as they are. I'll for sure I will explore patinas. Yeah, and a patina isn't per se fake. You could call the act of making something older than it is fake, but the patina itself actually, oftentimes, depending what you're using, actually starts the process of oxidation of the bronze, which actually it's a real thing. you just give it a little push right at the start, and so this is why it's maybe I don't know if you could call it a forced patina, but it isn't really fake. It you could say it's fake when it's just a color painted on. I don't know. But I'm looking forward to experiment with that, for sure. Tension, trigger word for some you out there. The cymbal, a cymbal has, I want to say, has tension in it, holds tension in it. same thing with a violin. The word tension is well, Dave Collingwood, we all know it, don't like the term. Others use it. Some replace it by the word just rigidness or stiffness of the cymbal. Tension, I don't know. I think tension is an okay word, or maybe an important way. I'm just not sure yet if I really understand it. But the cymbal is somehow under tension. You can flip it, and when you flip, you probably shouldn't do it, but if you flip a cymbal inside out, you can feel that there is tension that builds up and more and more and more, and then it flips, and then you can go the other way and back and forth. So there is some sort of energy or tension. In violin, there are different levels of tension, but it's definitely an important part. You have your strings. You put tension on the strings. The strings runs over your bridge. The bridge pushes down on the top plate. The top plate at some point maybe would want to give in because it's a lot of pressure coming from the strings. But in the same time, if you have your string, your length of the string, and you tighten it, what's happening is also you also tighten it this way. It's like squishing the whole violin. So this gives the violin this makes it possible for the top plate to push back on the pressure that is coming from the top. So it's like a weird state of tension, and the violin is fine by the top of the violin can hold the tension as long as it's mounted on the rest of the violin, and because there is a counter force or tension pulling like this makes the top push like this, even though everything wants to go this way. And there are some parts of the violin where you purposely make things that you intend to glue together not quite flush, but you leave a little bit of space and you glue it then together, which results in a, well, you could argue it's easier to glue because if you have two wooden plates you want to glue back, you would plane the surfaces, make sure they are level, and when they're snug, you glue them together. But if you would leave a little space, the good thing is you could use a clamp just in this one spot where the space is the biggest, and the rest would fall, would work itself out. You could use only one clamp, but that's not the reason. There are arguments about it and discussions, and I don't know actually what's going on right now, or but you can purposely leave some tension. Glue is extremely strong. Glue in most cases is stronger than actual wood. So you don't have to worry about something breaking again after you have glued it. When it's properly glued with the proper planing and adjusting, it will hold. It will not break, not ever. Yeah, weird stuff. Cracks. Number 10. Number 11, cracks. Cymbal can crack, violins can crack. You cannot fix cracks in cymbals, but you can deal with cracks. You can drill them out, or you can sand them, actually make the crack a little bitter so it doesn't rub. You can cut a big chunk of you can cut away the whole thing. But this is all dealing with cracks. It's not fixing the cracks. We cannot yet fix cracks, really. But in violin making, of course you can. You can fix anything. You can... The restoration of violins, like dealing with old, messed up violins and fixing them, it's a very, very, very big part of violin making. And yeah, and you could fix anything. It's crazy. Basically, just to put the point across, you could basically go to a violin maker with a bag of sand, dust, and ask him or her to put it back together into a shape of a violin. Yeah. No, you can really do extremely crazy things, like elongate a violin by, say, 1 centimeter. Just make the whole thing 1 centimeter longer. But you want to keep the perfect curvature. You don't want a flat portion at the end, so you cannot just glue something there. You take the whole thing apart. You start a whole process of very nerdy stuff and gluing and re-lacquering and it's possible. Everything is possible in violin making. It's amazing. It's crazy. And the reason why this is so important or such a big part in violin making probably is, well, first off, we have to fix all the broken violins. And a violin can be a fragile thing. And you also have to deal with instruments that were made before a certain point. The point being the time of the introduction of metal strings, before they were gut strings with much lower tension. And I don't remember, but I think also the length of the string has been it got longer a little bit. So some of the old instruments weren't fit to be switched to metal strings. First off, because they actually, maybe, I don't know, couldn't hold the tension of the metal strings, and they would be too short anyway, or something like that. But I think they modded some of the Stradivariuses to be of a little longer size, speaking of the neck, and adding stuff to it that would withhold the modern string. And that means you cut off the head and you cut off the neck, and you make a new neck that is longer, or you rescue the original neck and glue something, you add something to it. It's messy, just for the sake of the violin being able to play solo against a whole orchestra. That wouldn't have been possible before. So the violin got louder and louder and louder and louder and louder and louder, and yeah, that's just something to think about, which is interesting. That a violin in the old days, it would have sounded a little more nasal and much softer. Yeah, and there are people interested in exactly that, and you can study those things, and there are people playing with instruments of certain times in history, and they make sure everything is like properly set up to reflect how it really was back then. Very interesting. It's crazy. Oh my god, it's so long. Number 12, lacquer, varnish, sealing, protection. Violin has lacquer on it. Cymbal doesn't have lacquer on it, but some companies put like a sealing varnish lacquer thing on it in order to prevent fingerprints. Prints the just the touching of the cymbal with skin and with sweat. Makes the oxidation of the bronze boost. Like actually, when it's when the cymbal is the freshest, like freshly from the lathe, and you grab it with sweaty hands, you can almost instantly see or at least after some hours, or you can see the marks of the fingerprints, and it's not just the oily parts. It's really I think it's the acid probably in the sweat that boosts the oxidation of the cymbal. And in violins there is lacquer. Of course, we talked a bit about it before in the mystique thing, the secret stuff. The deal with lacquer in violins isn't that it has it's not that it adds something wonderful to the sound. That's not the case. What it does is actually it protects the wood, especially the top plate, being because it's of soft wood, made of very, very soft wood, very, very thin, so it would just dissolve. There is the constant touching of your hands. There is the thing you put on the bow that lands on it, and you will maybe you want to clean it up, and you rub it in, and you rub the wood away, and it would just a violin that's often played, like regularly played, wouldn't survive 300 years if it was not lacquered, if there wasn't lacquer on it or something that protects the wood. There is also some sort, or to some degree also the inside of the violin is sometimes there is some stuff you can put inside the violin, like to deal with the little wood bugs, I don't know, worms. You could do something to prevent this, but on the outside you really need a lacquer that that protects the wood. It would be munched away so very quickly, and the lacquer isn't really sounding that good. The violin would play even more beautiful right before you lacquer it. If you'd played without lacquer, it would probably sound better. So a good lacquer is actually the best of the worst thing. So when you think about it that way, it takes away a little bit of the mystique. It's just something we have to do. It's not magical. Yes, it does change the sound to some degree, but it mostly messes with the sound, and a good lacquer just messes less. Yeah, that's at least how I learned and understand this thing. Number 13, thick equals harsh or less bass. Thick cymbals are pingy and not warm. And similarly, in violin making, you have when the soundboard is too thick, you get the high frequencies still are happily translating, but the bassy part, the warmth, will get limited. You can push it to a certain degree, and then it falls apart. But in violin making, thinner usually also means louder, which in cymbals is a mixed bag. I'm not so sure if I would say that a heavy, thick cymbal is louder. It's used in music that's louder, and drummers that hit really hard. And it sounds louder, but I'm not sure if I would say that is actually louder. I'm not sure about that. Number 14, a tenth of a millimeter, which is just a magic number. In violin making, you deal with tenth of millimeters. And the thingy I talked about, the measurement thingy, you read tenth of millimeters. And in violin making and in cymbal making, you deal with tenth of millimeters. This is just a very pleasurable measure or a unit of measurement. It's something you can see. You can still see a tenth of a millimeter. It's something you can easily feel. You could feel much more by tactile. This part of the finger here. You can feel. I don't know how much, but I guess maybe even a hundredth of a millimeter, maybe more. I don't know. This here is crazy stuff. You can feel a lot of things like crazily, and the tenth of a millimeter is just very workable. It's super fine, but in the same time it's not. It's just funny to me that it's the same thing. It's just, or at least for me, it's all about tenth of millimeters, like all the way, in both worlds. Number 15. I'm dying here. Playing or testing during production. I don't do this very often so far. in my baby smithing life. I'm not so much interested how the cymbal sounds when I did something to it or hammered it. I couldn't even translate what I'm hearing in an early state to what the cymbal would sound in the end. So I stay away from playing the cymbal until it gets to a point where it comes close to what it would be after it's done and after it's rested. Sometimes I play around the bell, searching for soft zones, but I could easily feel those soft zones. I try to avoid so hard, but I'm still fighting. I'm still fighting. I'm sad that just now I thought that I was starting to get better at the zone around the bell to make it to make a cymbal more more stiff and more strong. And just when I think at least I started to get somewhere, I had to take this break because we're moving the workshop, and I hate it. I just want to keep on experimenting. So I don't play my cymbals during production, during I make them, only at the end. Not at the very end, but closing in on the end. This is where I would actually start to play. And before that, and this ties a little bit into the point of mystique. Or was another point? I don't know, but until that point I'm talking about, I rely on feel and measurement and sound. The sound I get during the even that passes my protection headphones, and the feel of the hammer and the anvil and the bronze squished in between. Maybe so. I don't know. It's a bunch of things I take as helpers. But playing the cymbal, maybe the bell. But I'm not even that much interested in playing the bell when I know I'm going to lathe it anyways. Only when the blank is very very thin to begin with. That would be a moment when I would go in and play it in an early stage. Maybe I will be able to do this later on. I've seen Michael Peisty do it instantly and constantly. I just wasn't sure what he was hearing, but he can translate it to something else, and I cannot translate it yet. So I it just doesn't mean a thing, to be honest. But yeah, maybe this will I will evolve, and I will play the cymbal in an early stage in the future. Physically, number 16, it's physically demanding. Cymbalsmithing is physically demanding. I had already all kind of problems with my hands, and it's really hard. And lately I was into hitting really hard, but sparsely. And this means that what I'm talking about is a hammer, a swing of a hammer, a heavy hammer, bordering 1 kilogram, 900 grams, 1 kilogram, something like that, and you push it up, you pull it up to like here, and go full blast, like really, bam, This is there are different techniques to do it. I found out that when I do very light hammering and fast hammering, it's a bouncy thing. I turn the cymbal very fast and I hammer very fast and I try to be loose. And it's like playing a drum. Dave Collingwood also said to me once when I asked him for help with technique, that he uses something like a molar stroke, which means like something like that instead of like that. And I'm getting to it. It's getting much better. It's a trade-off. When I go like this, I could be extremely precise in where my hammer stroke goes, but I'm like tensed up like this, and this obviously doesn't lead anywhere. So I have to be able to let the hammer move freely, which is much more comfortable on the body, but I'm less accurate, and I have to deal with that. But it's okay. Violin making is physically demanding to even violin making. So by violin making, we always mean violins, violas, cellos, and double basses, the whole family. Violin being the smallest one. It's so tiny, and you would think, well, this is just it's all very small and fine. But you'd be surprised. The bottom part of the violin, the bottom plate, is made of maple, as is the rest of the violin. The neck, the thin, I don't know the name, rib, the thin plates of wood that bends around. This and the bottom part, those are all in maple. And maple is a hard wood, and you have to carve a lot of material away, and you do it by hand. If the instruments get bigger, people start to use electric chisels that go like bzzz, or something, some kind of help, because to carve out a double bass's curvature by hand in maple, I think it's crazy. You certainly can do it, but I'm not sure if it does something to the sound. Pretty sure it doesn't matter how you get rid of the material you just have. And even a violin on a hot summer's day, working on a bottom plate, carving the inside out or the outside, it's repetitive. You have to make sure that your chisel don't run away with you. You have to be in control. You don't want to tense up. Same discussion, but I remember it like being pretty hard, like even on the body, and you get blisters. And yeah, working on a violin can be physically demanding. You'd be surprised. 17, judging by eye or eyeballing. So this is a thing I love. Judging shapes by eye, judging symmetry by eye, judging thickness by eye, just eyeballing stuff. I love that. It's like almost like a hobby. I just like to check if a curve is perfectly round, or if it's supposed to get like it opens up. Is it a constant opening up? And this you do in Cymbalsmith. I do it in Cymbalsmithing, and all the time. And in violin making, same thing. You start with your shapes, and you draw around the shape to start with, and it's all measured, and it's all very much in control, and the eye is not really used to judge. But at the end of the process, you have the overlapping edges of your board. You have the roundness of these borders. You have so many things that you would judge by eye, mostly later in the process of making a violin. There are shapes and curvatures all over the place, and you judge a lot of those things closer to the end of finishing up. You judge by eye, and this is fun. I like that. Material 18. Material: traditional versus cheap. You have a standard materials. In Cymbalsmithing, it's B20. In Violinmaking, it's a mixture of some sorts of wood. The thing I don't know the name of on top, the soft Christmas tree wood, and maple around, maple bottom. The neck is made of maple, and you have your hardwoods for your fretboards, and I think the bridge is also made of maple, but a different cut differently. It's like a traditional set of materials, and you can go away. You can move away from those standard materials. And in Cymbalsmithing, you have your, I don't know the names, B8 or Paisty does different things. Every brand has some cymbals that are differently. Some are different for a sonic reason, and some are different for money reason. Like the cheapest of materials to make a cymbal, and still can sound like a cymbal. It still can make a noise. That's all good. It's nothing to get upset. They all behave differently. In violin, you have you're pretty free as far as the bottom part goes. There are a lot of experiments with not using maple at the bottom. The rest is pretty set. And if you move away too far, like even to the point where you would use plywood for the top plate, this would be such a bad idea in violin making, not in double bass making. I have played double basses made out of plywood, which sounded perfectly fine. The thing is just so huge. It just somehow it can still work. It has to be made a certain way. Not every plywood bass does sound good, but there are some that they sound really good, and actually it's a nice thing, especially maybe for musicians that travel a lot. So a plywood is much it deals better with climate changes, and it's not so much about temperature but about humidity. It's a good thing to have a plywood double bass around, actually, to take to the places where it's rough or whatever. It can work, but it's not working on a violin. The thing is so small, and it's not working. So before I said, in Cymbalsmithing there are reasons to use different materials. In Violinmaking, it's mainly just money or production. So if you get a very cheap violin from China, for example, you can buy one maybe for, I don't know, $60. I don't know, $80. A ridiculous small amount of money for a violin, and you would get that violin, and it would be made of plywood, and the curvature would be very flat, barely a curvature because it's plywood and it's pressed, and it sounds horrible. It really sounds horrible. And I've put this point to the list also to make a point if someone is watching this not as a cymbalsmith but as not a violin maker, because I'm not an actual violin maker, but someone who maybe wants to buy a violin, especially for someone else, or maybe like for their children, for a beginner. This is a very an important note. Don't give a cheap violin to a beginner. That shouldn't be even an option. It's a very, very bad idea to give a cheap violin to a beginner. A beginner has to be able to hear what she or he is doing, and holding the bow differently, or playing differently, playing at different points. This should all be immediately coming back to you. And with a very, very cheap violin, it's just a squeaky nightmare. You could probably give the cheap violin to a superb musician, and they could make some sound of it, use it as a sound effect, make some crazy noises, whatever. They would be fine. But a beginner, please don't give cheap violins to beginner. It's just messed up. If possible, go to your local violin maker and rent a violin, a good violin. That would be the way to make someone happy and inspired. Not buy a cheap violin. That's really, don't. Number 19. We're almost through. This is the most silly thing I ever did. I thought I could do it in 10 minutes, and then I thought maybe in 20, and I think now we're... Okay. Number 19. Architectural strength and statics. Things get more strong sometimes when they're bent. If you have a flat piece of metal, and like say a really thin band of metal, if you would bend it, it would get more. It would get stronger, if you know what I mean. But this involves bending, and bending leads to tension. And by architectural, if it's even a word, architectural strength, I don't mean shapes that are pushed into this shape, but I mean something that just has this kind of a form or shape. Let's say something rounded, and it would withhold probably more impact as the flat counterpart. And I don't know how this translates to cymbal, because cymbal, you always pushing the metal into some shape. You could well, it's an interesting point. If you would press the whole shape of the cymbal in big companies, they can do that. They can take the whole thing, glowing red, into the pressing machine, press the shape, the whole shape of the body of the cymbal, the bell of the cymbal, everything is pressed, and then it would probably go back to the oven, glow glow to the point of really glowing red, and then quench it in water. Now this cymbal would actually start its life without much tension in it, which is very, very interesting. So everything I do when I take a flat blank, and start hammering bell and then the body, I push the metal around, and it's forced into the state. Whereas a pressed shape or bell is like neutral. It's really just the form. So I don't have no experience with that, but I would figure that when you press a shape, same thickness as another cymbal that you make from with a blank hand hammering, I would say that the pressed shape probably is weaker, but I don't know, because it's just the form, but it's still more strong than a flat piece of metal. It's just the architectural strength, just the form, just the roundness of it gives it some strength. But I would think that it would probably best to hammer it some more. I don't know. I don't have no experience with that. Number 20, cloning and tribute. This is a hot topic as well, recently discussed in the independent Cymbalsmith community, and I think it's a very good discussion to have. So this is something that you find in cymbals and in violins, but it's different. In cymbalsmithing, you have tributes to drummers, to musicians. You also have tributes to cymbalsmiths or cymbal factories, but then you would probably use the term clone, like an old K clone. You cannot make a Elvin Jones clone. That's just silly. But you can try to pay tribute to a sound, the way a drummer make the cymbal sound. Hence the term tribute, I guess. But in violin making, you don't have that. You just have clones. You only focus on the violin makers, not the musician. At least as far as I know, it's a long, long time ago when I studied the violin making. But you don't buy or find I don't know. I don't even know any violin players, Kreisler. You don't do a tribute to Kreisler or to I don't know, some names. You find clones of the violin makers, but not of the musicians. In fact, you just know which musicians play which instrument. So you know, I don't know. I hope I remember this well. I think Paganini was a very famous drummer, I want to say, a violin player, violinist, violin player, and I think he played a Guarneri. Not 100% sure, but it's a link. Or Anne-Sophie Mutter plays a certain Stradivarius model. And those are linked, so you know which exact violin famous musicians play. But you wouldn't go and make a clone or a tribute of a musician. Just, well, that's the same in violin and making. You do clones. You do clones of the craft. You do clones of the actual instrument builders. Sorry. You never do, and you do tributes, or some do or have done tributes of musicians. But this is only a thing in Cymbalsmithing. This is not working in Violinmaking, which is probably more how it should be, and it's also a tradition. It's not just some violin makers that try to emulate or clone a Stradivarius. It's basically every violin maker. Every you just go with a Stradivarius. You take the measurements of those and you go with that. That's just how it is. Maybe once in a while you go nuts and make a Guarneri, which was like the drunken neighbor of Stradivarius. I just know some stories, and I don't even know if those are true. But if you look at the Guarneri violin, it has not the same precision as a Stradivarius. The Stradivarius is very refined and every curve makes sense to the eye, and it's very tasteful and almost to the point where it's neutral, and this is how it is used now. It's just a default value. And when you make a Guarneri, you go into crazy territory. You enter drunken, poor violin maker with probably questionable tools but he did it, and he did it very fast. You can see it even by looking at the violins he made. They are tilted and oblique and crazy and not symmetrical and even rough in the inside. He didn't even care to polish it up. That's a simplification of that, but just so you get an idea. And Stradivarius actually was maybe like a brand. I think he had a workshop with helpers and workers, and I think he was kind of rich. I don't know. So we have those worlds. But usually you go with a Stradivarius and you go from there, and then you add your own thing, and that's that. So cloning tribute, cloning of instrument makers in both worlds. Tribute, that's nothing. That's not happening in violin makers. Tribute to musicians, I mean. Country 21. We're almost done. Country of origin or homeland. What's the homeland of cymbals? What's the homeland of violins? And to me it's pretty clear, but I have to make sure to point out that we are talking about modern cymbals, or even cymbals for a drum set. And this is not an old thing. This is a very new thing, actually. So there were cymbals, I figure, in China a long time ago, way before Turkey. Or there were cymbals in Turkey before the thing was happening. We all know 400 years ago. But to me, the homeland to the modern symbol, to me, is clearly Turkey, and the homeland of violins is Italy. And also there, we have to point out that this is just some sort of a stringed instrument played with a bow, and this is not where there are instruments like this all over the world. Some instrument even just using the bow and or the bow and some sort of resonating bodies or yeah. And it goes back way. It goes way back. So Italy is the homeland or country of origin of the modern violin, not of other stringed instrument played by the bow. This is important to know. 22 hums and resonance. In cymbals we talk about hums. I talk about hums, at least to myself, all the time. In violins you don't have exactly hums, but you have you can have some notes that are thinned out, so the opposite of a hum, but you can have some notes that resonate very loud, that where it hits the resonance of the whole body and it just explodes and it gets very loud. In violins that's not that much of a problem. You can kind of deal with it and play around it, and it's also linked to a certain frequency. Frequency. So you play your chromatic scale on the violin, it's all fine, every note is fine, and suddenly, dong, you have one note that is slightly more resonant, and you could play around it by play softer on this very note, depending on where you're in what room you're in, probably. But the difference to hums in cymbals is that the other notes are not bothered by this one frequency. As long as you stay away from that frequency, you're fine. Whereas in cymbal you can have a hum in a ring, in a zone of the cymbal, or just a patch, or I don't know, a local zone which is softer, and you could hear this hum also when you're playing it on normal in your normal ride or stick or playing surface. The hum, this one hum, it's a lot of hums, but if one that sticks out can feed constant information, and it's annoying. It can be annoying, and when it's not standing out that much, and there are other frequency that stand out, and it's a mixture, and at some point it just dissolves itself. it's not that it goes away. There are hums, but it can be just like a palette of, it can be a little orchestra of different hums, and when they're not overly loud, it can be I want to say good thing. I don't know, good thing. It can be a okay thing, but you cannot deal with it as a musician. You only can deal with it as a well. You can be a musician with a hammer, and then you can at least try to deal with it. But in yeah, the you don't have the option. You can play at a different point of cymbal to avoid it. You could use a different stick. I found that when I used to use very thin, very light maple sticks, just the lightest of and thinnest of sticks, because I'm mostly just playing for myself or rehearsing or just fooling around on my drum set, really. And I don't love to put ear protection on, so I'm playing very soft. And I figured, well, I also take a stick that is very soft. And then I met with Michael Piesty, and he uses a big Firth SD2 driver stick as far as testing and playing his cymbals. And I thought, well, if it's good enough for him, I'll be fine with this stick. And I ordered this stick, and I'm since playing with this stick. And it's interesting because it's a heavier stick, it's a thicker stick, it is still maple, but it has a lot of weight to it. And the thing this stick or similar sticks are able to do, it can move the whole cymbal. The stick, this kind of stick can really set the cymbal in motion. And with a tiny little light stick, you just bounce off the surface of the cymbal, but not really moving the cymbal's lowest frequency. You're just playing on you're playing kind of in the harmonics of the cymbal, somewhere up. And I found that a very light stick is the worst thing for hums. And this is a kind of a question or a theory. I figure that a light stick is not strong enough to set this whole cymbal in motion, but it is barely, or it is on the edge of being strong enough to set a weak spot of the cymbal in motion. And that would be your hum. So playing a very light stick, to me, I find it that that your cymbals, you'll find all kind of hums. When you use a very heavy stick, you play through all these hums. You set the cymbal in motion, and there is like a grounding frequency, a low frequency, and it moves, and you hear the actual voice of the cymbals, and the hums kind of go away. So I don't like those sticks anymore, but now I'm using them sometimes to hunt for hums. When I have the feeling that something isn't right or hummy, I sometimes go back to the light stick and make those soft zones come out, and then I know here it is, or that's the problem. So that's interesting. And of course, if you have a cymbal that has no hum or doesn't have a problem with hums, a light stick produces a different sound, and the sound it can still be very pretty. And there are a lot of drummers using light sticks, and I love the sound. It's just something I feel like at least for the time being, I cannot go back to super light sticks, because I feel like also as a cymbalsmith um, I have to hear how the whole thing actually sounds, and just bouncing of the surface doesn't it doesn't do it. It doesn't. I don't know. It's like taking a picture with bad lighting, or something. It's just half the story. Where's the other part? Well, something to think about. We're almost done. Second last. If anybody made it so far, I almost feel bad for them, but I like it. In the same time, number 23. Should we even go there? Because we talked about this before. It's pressed curvatures. We did that. You can press a bell, or you can hammer a bell. And in Violinmaking, you can press a shape, but these are only the cheapest ones. We talk about that. 24. Price. A good violin is pricey. A good cymbal is pricey, but you find your or you get lucky and find something good for a cheaper price, or you find something beautiful within a cheap instrument, which is something I actually do a lot. I love cheap instruments. Like, I'm a multi-instrumentalist, and I have a lot of instruments, and I want to be able to have a guitar and then put it on the ground and take this one, and not caring every time how I put the guitar down and is it safe. I just want to play it, and I want to get it dirty, and I find it also amusing to play cheap instruments. I don't know why. As a cymbalsmith, cymbals are pricey because it's just a long process. It takes me a long time. I will get faster and better, which would reduce the price, but then I will probably up the price again because I have more experience. So you're in bad luck. Anyhow, this turns out it's always going to be pricey. It's oddly enough, there are companies putting out cymbals which are even way pricier, and I don't get really where this stems from. The actual price, what the calculations are behind it, feels weird, but that's okay. And we're done. Okay. I have a number 25, and this is the last one, and this is something that is not that something that differs between cymbalsmithing and violinmaking. And I don't want to bum anybody out, and I'm thinking that probably there are options. So the thing, number 25 would be, a cymbal is vegan and a violin is not. And I'm sure that there are experiments done to make violins vegan, and I don't think that there are animals or products of animals involved where the material taken from the animal would be taken for that reason. I'm not sure about the bow of the violin. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know. But the rest there is like in a violin you have fish and rabbit and bees and a lot of other stuff and lice, um, and it sounds very awkward and scary, but it's not. It's usually, for the most part, it's the glue that is made of fish skin or fish bones, rabbit bones, and those are byproducts of the industry as it is. Those animals don't get hunted down for to be made into glue, so don't be bummed out. It's just a thing. It's just a thing a lot of people don't know. And you have, so yeah, for the glue, and it's very important to have a proper glue, and the glue has to hold, and you have to be able to remove the glue. And this kind of glue we're talking about, you can dissolve, or you can open up a violin or fix parts. You can take the violin apart by slightly water. Use a little bit of water and a little bit of heat, like a mixture, and the glue will open up. Oftentimes you can even use the same glue that was already there. You heat it up again and you can use the same thing again. You probably clean it and use new glue. So this is where the most animals are involved. It's glue. And the other, bees are involved in a thing called propolis. I don't know what's the English word. And also this is not something, this is not, it's a byproduct, but really not of the industry, but really of the bee itself. It's something that it gets discarded by the bees. So we shouldn't worry probably too much about that. And then you have your, I want to say lice. I'm not even sure. It's shellac, which not always, but sometimes is used in lacquers. And this is, I think, kind of a lice living, or a small insect living, I think I want to say India, but I'm not even that sure. Living on trees and cover themselves with a residue, I think, when they're, or when they die, or when they have like offspring, but themselves they are going to die, but they made sure they put the offspring somewhere, and then they cover themselves with a very thick residue. I think that's that. And I don't know why the animals do it, and I don't know if animals get hurt. There are farms for those kind of trees. Yeah, just something to think about. So that was that, the insanely long list. I'm never going to do this again. I have to research those things more. This is ridiculous. I hope you survived till the end. I wouldn't. I think it's probably more fun to talk about those things than to actually listen to it. I'm not sure. Let me know what you think. That's that. Have a good time. See you. Bye.